So I gotta be real honest, guys. When I first started out, I had no idea what the scopes were for. Like most of us probably starting out, I always judged my exposure triangle and anything related to color correction and color grade just based off of my eyes and what looked best to me when I was doing it in post. Not the way things should be done. But now after learning the scopes, I'm able to get the best quality out of my photos and videos for all of my projects that I work on now. So guys, recently I did purchase the x-rite color checker passport video. They do have a photo version of this as well as a bigger video version size if you're in a studio setting or a fixed location setting, for example, something like this. They do have the passport version available, obviously, because it is small, compact, handheld. You can put this in your pocket and travel about with it for quick scenarios where you need to get your exposure levels right and your color correction right. Now, I know this is the world of YouTube where people are paid by companies to review the product and to give a kind of biased review on the product that they're given. This is not the case. I was not paid by this company. They did not send me this product. I paid for this out of my own pocket. So just want to let you all know that before we get into this whole video. Now guys, in this video, I will be showing you all how to do this inside of Davinci Resolve as well as Premiere Pro. I do know some of you all are unfamiliar with Davinci, even though it is free and it is a better color correction system. Some of y'all are just unfamiliar with it. It's fine. I'm going to be showing you all how to do it inside of Premiere Pro as well. So let's go ahead and see how to get the best exposure levels, colors, and all the above using this color checker.
So now that we're inside of Davinci Resolve, I'll be showing you two examples that were shot in two different scenarios with two different cameras. The first example will be Creative Ryan that was shot on the GH5 in 400 megabytes 10-bit all-in option 4K. And then the second example is going to be Minute, and this was shot inside of his studio with artificial lighting, and it was shot on the 1DX Mark II with the C-Log 3 profile option, and the lighting that we did use was the Aperture 120D light, which was the artificial lighting to light up his studio. So let's go ahead and hop into C. Ryan's first. Now with that being said, this is what the final outcome will look like after we've set our exposure levels, set our white balance, set our 6 chromatic colors, and set our skin tone. And then this is going to be the flat image that we begin working with. So with that being said, let's go ahead and clear out all of these. Now for this, you'll create your first node by hitting Option S, and this is the command shortcut to create a new node. We will right click and click node label, and we will label this color checker. Hit enter. And then what we're going to do is from here we will head over to this tab and we will select color chart. And what we want to do is we want to have this color chart from Davinci Resolve be able to match onto our color chart in our video. So let's go ahead and match that up real quick. Now from here we want to go ahead and go down to our color chart tab, and we want to have the color chart here match up to our corresponding color chart that we're using in this video. So for this, we're using the x-rite color checker passport video. We're going to select this, and we know we shot this on the GH5 in Vlog, so we want to select source gamma tab, and we want to scroll down until we find Vlog. We want the target gamma and the target color space to be Rec 709, and we shot this outside, so I want the color temperature to be 5600. And now all you have to do is hit match. And what it will do is it will match up the color chart that we selected from Davinci Resolve to the actual color chart inside of our video. Now that we've done that, we can move on to setting our exposure levels, our white balance, and our colors and skin tone. So setting our exposure levels and white balance now, we'll go ahead and hit Option S to create a new node. And let's go ahead and remove this color chart by selecting the Off tab. Let's right click and label this node White Balance Part 1. From there, we want to go to this tab and we want to select Power Window and come down to this tab and select the Power Window tab from here. And we want to come down and select the Pen tool. Now, what we want to do is we want to zoom in and we want to create the Pen tool box around the whites, the mid gray, and the blacks to be able to set our exposure level and our white balance. Once we've selected and put the box around, it now crops out and creates that box. And to be able to only see the box, all we have to do is come up here and select the magic wand and select that, and it will then show you only the whites, the grays, and the blacks. Now, once we have this all ready to go and selected, let's go ahead and go down to our scopes. And what you want to do is you want to hit the maximize button, and we want to have the waveform brought up. Now hit this tab and make sure that you're in Y and you're not in RGB or CBCR. And we want the colorize not on, we want it deselected. And this waveform tab basically makes your lines brighter. So now that we have this selected, what we want to do is go ahead and select our exposure levels and get these set correctly, and then we can go and get our white balance. So to set our exposure, what we want to do is come down to the tab over here, which is the curves tab, and hit this. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that only the Y is selected, not the R, the G, or the B. And we can go ahead and set our exposure levels. So we shot this in the GH5 on Vlog. Now with 18% middle gray in GH5 Vlog option, that's around 42 IRE. So what I usually try to do is I try to have it exposed on or a little bit above the 384 line. When it comes to the blacks, as long as you don't have it crushed below the 0 or on the 0 line, you're okay. And when it comes to the highlights, as long as you don't have it pushing past 100, which is pure white, basically that 896 to 1023 range is going to be pure white range. You don't want it to go anywhere above the 100, because then it's going to begin clipping the highlights. So let's go ahead and set our exposure levels. Let's set the blacks first and set it about right there. Now let's set our whites. Raise that up. And then what I like to do is select the middle point and bring that up till it gets right around the 384 line. A little bit above it will work. And now we have our exposure level set. Real quickly, if you want to set your white balance, a quick way to do this, if you didn't have your white balance card on your color checker passport video set up and filmed it, what you can do is come over to your color wheels tab and then come down here and select the eyedropper tool, and then just come over and click on the white bar. Now once you do that, it should set your white balance levels. Two quick ways to be able to double check this is you can go back to your pen tool and let's only select the white part right here. Let's go to our scopes, and what we want to do is we want to select vector scope. Now the way to be able to tell if you have white balance correctly is when you bring your vector scope up, once you've selected the whites in your pen tool, you'll see that the circle or the line is basically in the center. There is no line. The center point is in the middle. There's no line going to any other of these 6 chromatic colors, which is letting you know that this white bar is in fact white balanced. Just to show you real quick, if it wasn't white balanced, let's go to the color wheel tab and let's move the offset to a different color. Now as you can see, this line is now moving all about the chromatic colors, and if we look at this white bar, we now see that it's not white balanced. So let's put it back to the white balance level it needs to be at. And now that we've got our exposure levels and our white balance, now we can move on to setting our 6 chromatic colors and setting our skin tone levels. So let's go ahead and deselect the wand, and then let's go over to your power window and deselect the pen tool, and let's zoom out. And now we're ready to get into the 6 chromatic colors. Now to set our 6 chromatic colors, let's create another node, Option S, and let's right click and label this 6cc for 6 chromatic colors. And what you want to do now is come over to the power window and create a new pen tool. And what we're going to do is draw a box around the 6 chromatic colors on our color checker. And now we have that. Okay. And then we're going to come over to our scopes and we're going to maximize it again. And we're going to make sure that we have our vector scope brought up. Now, when it comes to the 6 chromatic colors, you want these 6 lines to be corresponding with their 6 chromatic boxes. So you want all of these lines right here to be headed towards the boxes. So as you can see, some of these colors are off and need to be corrected. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is head over to our curves tab. And then this time we're going to hit the second bullet, which is our hue versus hue. And what I do is I select all 6 chromatic colors. And then I begin moving the lines to be able to correspond with their boxes. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's move the blue to the blue. Let's move this one over here. Let's move the yellow down a little bit. And let's move our green just a tad. Now once we've set the 6 chromatic lines corresponding to their boxes, we can go ahead and close out of the scopes tab, deselect the wand, and deselect the pen tool. And now we're ready to set our skin tones. Now to be able to set our skin tones, let's go ahead and select a new node. Let's go ahead and right click and labeled this skin tone. Hit enter, and let's zoom out of this. And let's come down to our qualifier tab, this little eyedropper tool. And what you want to do is select the eyedropper with the bullet. And what I like to do is select on our actual cheek. Let's go ahead and click there. And then you'll want to come back up to your wand. And you'll see that it has now selected our skin. But I do want to be able to get a little bit more of the skin. So what I like to do is I like to come down to the hue. And I like to drag this out. We'll get a little bit more of our skin. Let's go right about there. Let's zoom in real quick and feather it out. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out. And then just to be even more sure, what I like to do is go back to the power window and select the circle bar. And what I like to do is I like to put the circle bar on the cheekbone. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's take the magic wand off. And bring this down. And let's put it right on the cheek. And then let's put back on the magic wand. And then what we want to do is come over to our scopes. And now we want to go to our vector scopes. Let's maximize this back up. And basically what you want to do is when you come to your vector scope, you want to go over to this tab and make sure your 2x zoom is selected and your skin tone indicator line is selected. Let's deselect this and show what it would look like if it wasn't on here. Now you want your skin tones to be on this line or just a little bit to the right of it, because that'll give you a little bit more reds. I try to stay away from the left hand side going into the yellows. It just isn't pleasing really for the skin or visually. So to be able to fix this, this is a little bit too far over to the right towards the red. So what you want to do is come over to your color wheel. And then from there, what you want to do is go to either log or your primary wheel. And you want to move your offset over. As we said, this is a little bit too red, so we want to move this over towards yellow until we have it just kind of hovering above that line. Okay, I like that. Let's go ahead and close out of this. And then all we have to do is go to our power window, deselect the circle. Let's zoom back out. And let's deselect the magic wand. Now, I think he can be a little bit more red. So let's go back into the circle. Yeah, he's a little bit too yellow right now. Let's go ahead and take that back. Let's go back to the vector scope. Let's come over here, go to our offset. A little bit right there. Now this is preference though. It doesn't have to be on the line every time. Like I said, I do usually try to keep it in the reds more. And also you can add more saturation by raising it up. So I want to keep it in the red and right about, let's see how that looks. Let's close this out. Deselect the power window and deselect the wand. Yeah, that's much better. I like that much better than the yellows we had. So let's go ahead and look at the before. And now let's look at the after. Before, after. And if you want to, you can create another node and you can add a little bit of sharpening on this. I tend to only add maybe 1 or 2 stops of sharpening. So if you come over to this tab right here and you move the radius down below 50, as you can see, it begins to get sharper. I would not go below 45. I usually only go to about 49 or 48, just depends on which camera it is. This is the GH5, and I did have the sharpness down to -5, so I will put it down to about let's keep it at 49. And that's preference. You don't have to put sharpening on it. That's only if you want to. Now, this is how you're going to be able to set your exposure levels, your 6 chromatic colors, and your skin tones, so you have the best settings every time using this color checker. Now let's move on to another example showing Minute inside of the studio using artificial lighting. Now for this example, guys, before we head into Premiere Pro, I'm going to kind of skim through this pretty quickly since we actually went through the full process with the first example. Now this is going to be the after we've done everything we need to do, and this is the flat image that we're going to be working with. Before, after, before, after. Let's go ahead and clear all this out. Let's go through this whole process again. Let's create a new node. Let's Let's rename this color check. Let's head down to our power window. Excuse me, let's head to our color chart. Color chart. Let's match everything up. Okay, we have this all lined up and ready to go. Let's head down to our color chart. We're going to select the passport video. Now this time this wasn't shot in Vlog on a GH5. This was shot on the 1DX Mark II. So we want to find the Canon Log 3 profile. We're going to select that. And we do want it to go into the Rec 709 Gamma and the Rec 709 color space. Now this was shot in artificial lighting, and this was shot on the Aperture 120D light, which is actually 6,000 Kelvin. So what we want to do is just go down to the color temperature, and from 6,500 we want to change this to 6,000, and then we're going to go ahead and hit match, and that set that up for us. Let's take this off, and let's go ahead and set our exposure levels and white balance. Let's create a new node. White balance part 1. Okay, head over to our waveform, power window, pen tool. Let's select our whites, our mid gray, and our blacks. And let's bring this up and select the select the waveform. Let's set our exposure levels real quick. Let's raise up the highlights just a little bit. And let's raise the blacks up a little bit so it's not directly on the 0. And we can raise the midtones just a tiny bit. Alright, let's go ahead and set our white balance. Let's go ahead and head over to the color wheels. Select your eyedropper. Select the white bar. And let's double check to make sure that this is set correctly for white balance. Let's go ahead and select the pen tool real quick and move it up to only the white bar. Maximize this. Let's go ahead and go to the vector scope. It's white balance, perfect. So let's go ahead and set now the 6 chromatic colors. So now let's set the 6 chromatic colors, the new node. Let's label this 6cc, enter. Let's put that pen tool around the 6 chromatic colors. Let's go ahead and hit the magic wand. Let's bring up our scopes, and we're bringing up the vector scope. Let's go over to our curves and our hue versus hue. Select all 6 chromatic colors. And let's bring the lines to match their corresponding boxes. Okay, now we've set our 6 chromatic colors. The last thing we need to do is be able to set our skin tone. Let's deselect the wand. Let's deselect this pen tool. Zoom out. Let's go ahead and create a new node. Let's get our eyedropper tool. Let's make sure that we have the bullseye picker selected. Let's select his cheek and hit the wand again. And let's draw this out. Alright, let's go make our new power window circle. And let's put it directly on his cheek. Let's go ahead and reselect the magic wand. And let's now go over to our vector scope. And let's raise up the saturation. And move it a little tiny bit over to yellow. Let's raise up the saturation a little more. Right about there. Okay, let's close out of that. Let's deselect the circle and let's zoom out and let's see how the skin tones look. And let's create one more node. And now let's put the sharpening on. This was shot on the 1DX Mark II, so I'm going to put this down to about a 0.48. Let's go ahead and look at the before and the after. Before, after. So guys, this is how you'd be able to get the perfect exposure, colors, and skin tone inside of Davinci Resolve using the color checker. Now guys, the last thing I want to show you inside of Davinci Resolve is if you want to take what you did and export this out as a LUT to be able to bring inside of Premiere Pro, Say for instance you were editing inside of Premiere Pro, but you just did this whole process we did in Davinci Resolve, and you want to take the LUT and bring it inside of your edited Premiere Pro project. All you would have to do inside of Davinci is come up to this clip tab right here, select the clip tab, and then just select the clip that you did the adjustments to. You'll right click it, and then you'll come down to where it says generate 3D LUT cube, and you'll click that, and then you'll save it in whatever folder that you want to save it in. And then once you go inside of your Premiere Pro project, all you have to do is bring in a Lumetri color tab and then bring that inside of Lumetri color. But I will show you that inside of Premiere Pro now that we're hopping over to that. So now that we're inside of Premiere Pro, if you wanted to bring your custom made LUT in Davinci Resolve and place it inside of the Premiere Pro on your footage in here, all you would have to do is come to the effects tab and search Lumetri color. Once you have Lumetri color, place it on your clip or your adjustment layer, and then all you would have to do is come down to your basic correction and search for the LUT that you made inside of Davinci Resolve. So for here I'm going to select the 1DX that I made for Minute, and then as you can see it brings in the LUT that we made inside of Davinci Resolve and places it on your footage in Premiere Pro. So that's the quick workaround if you want to just grade and do everything inside of Davinci Resolve color wise, and then place it inside of your clips inside of Premiere Pro. Let's go ahead and look at how we could create the same thing inside of Premiere Pro without even using Davinci Resolve. So with Premiere Pro, the downside is that it doesn't have the color checker tab like it does in Davinci Resolve, so we'll be skipping that step and heading straight into setting our exposure levels and the white balance. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have our new Lumetri color tab in. We're going to go to opacity and select the pen tool, and we're going to draw a box again around the whites, the mid gray, and the blacks, and that will mask everything out. Now I already have my Lumetri scopes tab up, but if you don't in your Premiere Pro, all you have to do is come to help and search scopes and click that, and then it will come up with your scopes inside of Premiere Pro. Now let's get out of the vector scope and let's go to our waveform, and let's close out the vector scope, and let's go ahead and now create a standard S curve. Now as I said, we don't have the color checker chart like Davinci, so we don't have that log to Rec 709 conversion like the color chart did for us inside of Davinci. So that's why we're going to now create a standard S curve log inside of our curves inside of the Lumetri color. So let's go ahead and set the blacks first. Let's bring that down. And now let's go ahead and select our white. And let's create that standard S curve. And I'm going to leave the white at around the 90 mark. And I'm going to put the midtones a little bit below the 60 mark. Let's bring this back down. Now that we've set our exposure level, let's go ahead and set our white balance. Let's minimize the mask to only cover the white bar. And let's head over to our vector scope. And let's close out of the waveform. And again, if you have the correct white balance, you won't see any line heading towards any of the 6 chromatic colors. It should just be a dot or a circle in the center of your 6 chromatic colors. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our 6 chromatic colors. So let's go ahead and delete this mask and create a new mask, which is going to go around our 6 chromatic colors. And now we have the mask for the 6 chromatic colors, and we already have our vector scope up. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now for this, what I'll do is I will come to the basic correction and raise our saturation up just so we can be able to see the lines that's corresponding to the boxes a little bit better. And we'll bring the saturation tab back down once we're done with this. Now as you can see here, the 6 chromatic color lines are almost close, but they can have a little bit of adjustments. So what we want to do now is go back down to our curves tab, and we want to go to the hue versus hue tab again. And then for this, what I do is I come down to the hue versus hue, and I set points on every single chromatic color. Okay, we need to move our blue closer to the box. And if I want to be picky, we can move the magenta a little bit over as well. And the red just a tiny bit. I'm being picky at this point. Let's move the green, tab it over. Okay, we're good. So let's go back up and delete our mask. And let's zoom back out. And again, this looks super saturated because we raised our saturation levels. Let's go ahead and put that back down to 100. And now the last step we're going to do is set our skin tones, and we'll be all set. Now to be able to set our skin tones in Premiere Pro, what we want to do is close down the curves tab and head down to the HSL secondary tab. Let's go ahead and open that. And the quick option of what I do is I click on the red and then I do show mask. And what that does is that usually selects our skin tones. And you can come up here to the H tab, to the hue tab, and you can either move it to the left to deselect some of that color, or move it to the right to select more of that color. And then the tab down here is going to feather out what you have. So if you move it over this way, it's going to feather it out more. If you move it over to the left, it's not. And as you can see, it has selected the skin tones tab on our color checker chart. Now, just like in Davinci Resolve, what I'm going to do is come up to opacity and create a pen mask around my cheeks to be able to center directly on my skin tones and nothing else that's selected, like for instance the picture in the background or the stuff on the wall, the light right here, etc. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in on his cheek, and we have the pen tool selected. Let's go ahead and draw a triangle around his skin, and again we have our vector scope brought up. Now, as I said before, this is a preference on if you want it to be more towards the yellow or the red, but you still want it to be basically on or a little bit to the left or to the right of that skin tone line. Usually, as I said, what I do is I'll keep it a little bit to the right because I want a little bit of red in my skin tones. I don't like that yellow look. It works for some people. It's all preference, but let's go ahead and scroll down to the HSL secondaries. And what you're going to do is you can either use this main wheel, or you can click the three-way color corrector and move the midtones over. I'm going to go ahead and just use the main wheel, and I'm not moving it over anymore towards the yellow, but I will give it a little bit more saturation. And let's go ahead and delete that mask and see how that looks. Just delete that opacity mask. Let's deselect the show mask for the HSL secondary, and let's zoom back out. And I'm happy with that. We have our exposure level set, we have our 6 chromatic color set, we have our white balance set, and we have our skin tone selected. Let's go ahead and take a look at the before and after. So this is going to be the after, and this is what we started with. Before, after, before, after. Now the last thing I do want to let you all know is don't let any of your 6 chromatic colors come outside of this area right here. This area right here is going to be your broadcast safe zone. Keep all of your colors inside of this broadcast safe zone just so you're, again, safe. It said, the name says it itself. Just be safe. Don't have these lines go outside of this. If for some reason you did a color correction or a color grade and any of these lines did happen to come outside the broadcast safe zone, it's not a problem. All you have to do is go into Lumetri Color, go to your curves, and find that one line or multiple lines that is going outside of that broadcast safe zone, and just lower the saturation level on it and make sure it's not affecting your skin tones.
Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the content that I am dropping on this channel. Check in with y'all later.